We managed to drive the majority of the West Wales coast in a Nissan Micra K11, our trusted first car and the only car we've ever had that has served us well over the years. We will start our journey in Solfach, and just so you know, I'll be using the Welsh names for every place we visit or mention. We are going to go from the south and we'll work our way northwards. Solfach has a nice little car park, which importantly is free up to 30 minutes. We did our best to always find free parking, and as we tried to cover as much coast as possible across 4 days, there were lots of flying visits, so parking fees were best avoided. Solfach, situated on an inlet, has a lovely path that lets you walk along the harbour. You actually can't see the open ocean from Solfach itself, but once you walk out you can. But this place is really sheltered and quiet. Porthstinian next, where you can walk along the cliffs to some amazing views. The whole coast of Wales can actually be walked, and a big thank you to the local authorities and farmers who help maintain these paths. You can take boat trips from the harbour here to Aberystwyth and visit the RNLI lifeboat station, which is usually open to the public Monday to Friday. There are also some chapel ruins here, and it is thought that Saint Justinian was initially buried here. He was close to the patron saint of Wales, Dewi Sant, but was murdered by having his head chopped off by some rebellious monks on Aberystwyth. They must have had enough of living under the strict and harsh conditions under Saint Justinian, because they ended up killing him. Yeah. Porthmaw, but more popularly known as Whitesands, is a very popular surfing beach, often touted as the best surfing beach in Ceibwr. Ceibwr, by the way, is Pembrokeshire. I know nothing about surfing, other than you need waves, and this place has lots of waves. Sadly, we had to pay for parking here, and at the time it was £3. Don't underestimate how far the waves travel up the beach, especially at the edges. We almost got caught out.
What do you mean? You get caught out? Oh, it's still coming. It's still coming.
Abereiddy has a nice little beach, with opportunities to go rock pooling, and this is a popular place for coast steering. There was an old slate quarry here, and when it was decommissioned, they let the sea flood the quarry, and this made a famous harbour called the Blue Lagoon. In our infinite wisdom, we managed to not actually film the Blue Lagoon. I think we'd done a lot of walking that day, and our phones had no signal, so we couldn't update our maps. So yeah, basically, we were just driving around with no plan, just doing our best to stick to the coast. And when you do this, you will probably miss some gems, but at the same time, you'll be pleasantly surprised when you come across them. Some fish and chips. They were very good, and we got them from a chippy in Porthgain called The Shed. Porthgain was surprisingly busy for the time of year, but there is a pub here and an art gallery, and of course the parking is free, so that's a massive highlight. Historically, there was a slate quarry here, and when that closed, it was fashioned for brick making, and eventually for providing construction aggregate. We were also lucky enough to see a seal chilling in the harbour, and of course from here you can easily join the coastal path. You can easily miss this next spot. Just outside Trefin is a lay-by, and next to it are some lovely white cottages overlooking a little bay. Here you can find an old mill made of stone. It closed in 1918, but only after serving the area for 500 years. This place is also great for rock pooling. There were loads of anemones here, and when submerged in water, their tentacles are revealed as they catch their food. Aberystwyth next, a lovely little spot if you want to go kayaking, but be warned, there is very little parking here. This place is very quiet and secluded. The tide was quite far out when we got there, but you can imagine nice calm waters in the harbour at high tide. There are some really interesting houses overlooking the harbour, and I imagine they don't go for cheap. There is a plaque to be found here for Alfred Johnson, in memory of his achievements. He was the first person to cross the Atlantic on his own with a small boat from Gloucester, Massachusetts to Aberystwyth. He even managed to survive a storm which caused his boat to capsize. He did it in 66 days and was averaging about 70 miles a day. Abermawr is a large beach that has free parking, but again not much space for cars. You get some lovely views as you walk along the cliffs. If the tide is out, it reveals tree stumps from an ancient forest, which was suddenly flooded at the end of the Ice Age. The stumps have been preserved by the salt water. We didn't head down to the beach that day, as we had lots of ground still to cover. Strumble Lighthouse, which can be found on Nissan Micra, which is cut off from the mainland when the tide is in. It was built in 1908 and ran on paraffin. Originally, the mechanism that caused the light to rotate needed winding every 12 hours. Eventually, it was electrified in 1965 and automated in 1980. This means it is not visited often by staff, and although there is a bridge to it, it is not accessible for the public. There is also a sheltered observatory here, and an ideal location for watching dolphins, porpoises and birds. Inside, there are some information posters telling you what wildlife can be seen in the area. Abergwaun, or in English known as Fishguard, is a town of roughly 3,000 people, and interestingly, the 1955 film Moby Dick, starring Gregory Peck, was filmed here. Abergwaun connects Wales to Ireland via the ferries that run from here to Rosslare. We managed to park next to what seemed to be a closed hotel. From there, we took a path that took us higher up, and this gave us some nice views of Abergwaun, and there were some steps that handily took us straight back down to the car. We actually visited this place twice, as it was on our return route from exploring Sir Benfro. Notice, it was much sunnier later that day, and we had some lovely views north of Abergwaun next to some nice cannons. Now for some very narrow roads that took us down to Eglwys. The Micra really does come into its own here, and it is a real joy to drive. From here, you can take a very popular walking route that loops around Dinas and brings you back to Eglwys. You have to pay for parking here, and like I say, the road down here is quite narrow, so make sure you have your driving shoes on. There is a lovely church here, and again it is quiet and secluded, and I can imagine it has its own microclimate and gets very warm in the summer. Trefdraeth, or more popularly known as Newport Pems, has a large beach next to a golf course and an amazing cafe called Cat Rock Cafe. We once took Christina's parents here, and Christina's mum said it was the best Caesar salad she's ever had. There is another Newport in Wales closer to Cardiff, hence why Pems is often added to it. In Welsh, the Newport found near Cardiff is actually called Casnewydd, so in this case, using Welsh names would be easier. Now to one of our favourite spots, Ceibwr Bay. This place is very dramatic. But don't expect a car park here, but just a lay-by of sorts. You get great vantage points if you want to go dolphin watching. There is also a small cave that the sea has made by eroding away the cliffs. This place actually reminds us of Jurassic Park. Mwnt. Sounds like it could be an insult, but it is one of the most beautiful places you will find in all of Wales. Just north of Aberdyfi, and now we have entered the county Ceredigion, is a cove, which showcases a beautiful sandy beach and a hill that you can climb to witness the dolphins and seals or the amazing sunsets. A small 14th century church can be found here, and people often get married here, and you can see why. A true gem of Wales. Further north still, we come to a very popular university town, known as Aberystwyth. We lived, studied and worked here for many years. We have many fond memories of times with friends in pubs to walking the prom on a beautiful summer's day. Aberystwyth is framed by two hills. To the north, Craig Glais, but known to all of the locals as Constitution Hill, and to the south, Pendinas. Students who come to the university often stay here long after the degree is over, because there is something special about this place. Maybe it is the sheer number of pubs, or perhaps the friendly nature everyone seems to have here. Aberystwyth boasts two beaches, but neither have golden sands, commonly known as North and South Beach. South Beach is a popular site for bonfires and barbecues, and dolphins are often spotted off South Beach, and when the tide is out you can explore underneath the pier and the many rock pools. When the starlings are here, they roost underneath the pier, and the sound is deafening as thousands jostle for the best roosting spot. Aberystwyth also holds a beautiful castle, and you can see both the North and South Beach from here. Aberystwyth will forever hold a place in our hearts, as it is the place where Christina and I first met. Borth is a small seaside town, which is locally known as the place that will be underwater soon. It did have a zoo here called the Animalarium, but has run into many issues that have made national news from time to time. For example, they accidentally killed their own lynx via a handling error, and that was happening during the time they accidentally let another one escape. The escaped lynx was killed by a hunter, but many judged at the time it should have been sedated and rescued. We then headed to a beach between Aberdyfi and Tywyn, and passed through the old capital of Wales, Machynlleth. I visited this beach often as a child, mainly because you could park for free and it wasn't as busy as Aberdyfi or Tywyn. Also, it was a bit safer to swim here compared to Aberdyfi, as the tides at the mouth of the Dyfi estuary produce dangerous currents for swimmers, and this spot is further away from the estuary. You do, however, have to cross a golf course to get here, and I remember as a child always keeping an eye out for golfers in case they whacked me with one of their golf balls. Fairbourne, interestingly, has no official Welsh name, and it is said to have mostly English descended people living here. Cardiff-born builder Solomon Andrews erected a seawall here during the 19th century, and then the potential for a seaside resort was envisioned by Arthur MacDougall, a Victorian entrepreneur. He wanted something that would rival Abermaw, or Barmouth in English, which is the seaside town just across the Mawddach estuary. Sadly, Fairbourne will soon be lost to rising sea levels, and is predicted it will be abandoned by as early as 2042, but no later than 2072. Local residents have heavily objected to plans to let Fairbourne be lost to the sea. Abermaw, just opposite Fairbourne, is another popular seaside town. Pont Abermaw, which is the bridge that serves the Cambrian line, has undergone recent repairs. Because it is made of wood, it has been riddled with marine woodworm, and these have enzymes which can digest the cellulose in the wood. Inland from both these coastal towns are the amazing mountains belonging to Parc Cenedlaethol Eryri, or Snowdonia National Park in English. Harlech is home to not only an amazing castle, but the second steepest street in the world, losing out to a street in New Zealand, although it depends where on the road you take your measurements. It was decided by taking the gradient from the middle of the road and not where it was lowest for both streets, ended up with Baldwin Street in Dunedin, New Zealand, winning the crown. Harlech Castle is a 13th century castle built by Edward I, but at one point was occupied by the Welsh when Owain Glyndwr led a rebellion against the English in 1404. Pwllheli, situated on the Llŷn Peninsula, has a nice golden beach, and at the east end of it is some rocky outcrops that we climbed to get a better view of the Welsh coast. All along the promenade here, you get the stereotypical architecture of a seaside resort. In case you haven't noticed by now, there are no English names for many of the places we visit in Gwynedd, and the majority that live here are Welsh speakers, and there are campaigns to prevent historically important Welsh names being lost to English ones. Abersoch, found on the Soch estuary, is a small place of only 800 inhabitants. It is very popular with tourists with its sandy beach and a great place for water sports. This popularity amongst tourists has led to many second homes being purchased here. This has forced house prices up in the area, meaning locals are unable to purchase homes here, and the Welsh Government and local authorities are under increasing pressure to reduce the number of houses being sold to existing homeowners looking to buy a holiday home for weekends and the summer. One scheme that is being introduced is that council tax on second homes will increase by 300% by April 2023. Traeth Porthgeiriad is a sheltered beach that is absolutely stunning. Sadly, you have to pay for parking here, as the caravan park has set up reg plate cameras and it costs £3, so it is unavoidable unless you want to walk for miles from a nearby village. Beyond the car park, you have to walk through a field, and you will meet some sheep, and then some steps lead you down. At the beach, a harbour porpoise carcass had been washed up on the shore, and we were also lucky enough to see a kestrel hovering above the sea cliffs. This was one of my favourite beaches, and we could have been there for hours just listening to the waves. The following day, after staying in Caernarfon, we decided to pick up where we left off and headed to the next beach called Porth Negwr. The beach is roughly 4 miles long, and again I could have stood there for hours just listening to the waves. beach is also known as Hell's Mouth because many shipwrecks have occurred here because of the large waves and lack of shelter from storms. Porth is another hidden gem. We actually avoided any parking charges by parking in a lay-by some 400 metres from the cove. This place is quite tricky to walk down to. You have to walk down some slopes and it is inaccessible if too wet. We noticed that sadly on this beach, like most beaches, there was litter getting washed up onto the shore. People had been collecting the rubbish and putting it into a pile near the steps. Aberdaron boasts a lovely beach, and you can organise trips to Ynys Enlli from here, where if you are lucky, you'll see dolphins, seals and seabirds on the way. Also, painted on the wall overlooking the village is the phrase Cofiwch Tryweryn, meaning remember Tryweryn. Originally, this phrase was painted on a wall near Llŷn Peninsula in Ceredigion, and it is still there. The motto refers to a reservoir being developed in the Tryweryn Valley, which caused one of the last Welsh-only speaking communities, Capel Celyn, to be lost. The purpose of the reservoir was to provide water for Liverpool and the Wirral, and even with staunch opposition in Wales, the plans went ahead. There is a link below to a film which describes the events in more detail. Porth is the departure point for Ynys Enlli, as the cove provides plenty of shelter for boats to embark on the journey. It also provides shelter for wildlife too, it seems. By the way, feel free to leave a comment about any special places you have visited in Wales, or even in Estonia. We'd love to hear from you guys. The next spot is just known as Mynydd Mawr, meaning big mountain. And what a place this is. I had a great time just driving up here, and from this vantage point you get views of the whole peninsula. This is one place you must visit, especially on a clear day. I try to trip up over, you know. Also, can we just appreciate the Micra? What a car for getting us this far, and with no issues. You can't give it enough justice.
No.
Nevin is on the north end of the peninsula, and you can park here for free near the beach, but it is limited for spaces, and a bit awkward to drive in and out of. But then, most places on this trip have been like that. I spoke to a local lady in my rusty Welsh, and she spoke of the forgotten village and said if I really wanted to test my driving skills and the car, I should head to a place called Nant Gwrtheyrn. Nant Gwrtheyrn has one road, in and out. It winds down the cliffs, and luckily has passing places, which weren't there before until it was improved. There also was a time when the village which serviced the quarry here only had goods and supplies sent to it via the sea. At the bottom is a Welsh language centre which provides Welsh lessons for adults. It also has a cafe, and the food was great. I was a bit nervous about driving back up the hill in the Micra, but it did it all in second gear. There is a car park at the top if you don't fancy driving down, and you do get some amazing views from here too. I don't think Christina wants me to drive down there ever again, based on some of her reactions.
Oh my god. Honey?
Yeah.
Honey?
That's fine.
What do you mean it's fine? Oh my god.
On the way up, you might struggle being first.
I have to push it then.
You can't push it.
Oh my god. Oh my god, I'm literally peeing myself. Oh, Ellie, stop it!
then headed across the bridge to Ynys Mawr, known in English as Anglesey, and headed to Porthgain. Here is one of the better beaches for rock pooling, and near to here is Abermawr, which literally means big beach. But we actually didn't manage to get down there. We got a bit lost, and at this point we were getting tired, so decided to head straight to Caergybi. Caergybi, or in English known as Holyhead, has a major seaport serving Ireland. Interestingly, this was the second busiest port in the UK behind Dover, for taking freight lorries back and forth. Since Brexit, however, freight traffic from Ireland has dropped 50% as of January 2021, and it looks as though trading at this port has not recovered to pre-Brexit levels as of January 2022. Our final stop was Ceibwr, which is almost the most northerly village in all of Wales. We decided to go here simply because I used to live in a village called Ceibwr, but this spelt with 2 M's, in mid-Wales. This place had a lovely vibe to it, and it was a Friday evening. We noticed lots of tourists had started to fill up the accommodation and houses in the area, and there was a bit of a buzz around the place as the weather was so good. And that's really it for our trip around the west coast of Wales. So we leave you with some views of Llŷn, with Caeredrys to our right and the sun setting. We hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe and leave a comment. Remember, this video was basically just to show people Wales, especially for our viewers in Estonia who may never get the chance to actually go there.